Thieves and Grave Hunters, welcome to another episode of History Rants. I am so freaking jazzed to rant about the Zoot Suit Riots. You guys voted for it. You really wanted me to do this, and I'm so glad you did because we should absolutely be talking about this. I'm gonna get pretty passionate in this one. I'm not gonna lie. I feel strongly about it. Also, yeah, disclaimer, I know might look as a little bit more 20s, 30s, but I don't care because guess what? Even though this takes place in the 1943, I love the mobster gangster woman look, okay? And it's my fantasy forever to rock that look. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it, guys. I'm gonna do it tonight. I don't care. Anyways, if you want to drink with me, you can find the recipe on my Instagram and TikTok as per usual. Down below, all the little deets. This, my friends, this is the Sleepy Lagoon Margarita. It's delicious. It's spicy. It's watermelon-y. I love it. Let's have a sip. Chin chin. Yes. Now, before we get on with the show, do not forget to slaughter that like button. Help the algorithm. I love you guys. Now let's talk about some things that are gonna make us pissed. So the Zoot Suit Riots, okay, take place in 1943, but as always, our story does not begin there because we need historical context, okay? So we have to go backwards to 1848 when Mexico becomes a part of California. So just like imagine this for a moment. Imagine you're a Mexican and you're standing on Mexico land, and then one day it's like, this is not Mexico anymore, this is California. Now you are a Mexican American, and we're gonna basically treat you like an immigrant, even though this is your land. We also, this is Native Americans. We know we're good at doing this, okay? It's messed up, it's not okay, but I need you guys to process this because this is not that long after that, okay? This is only like 100 years after that. There's 80,000 people that were originally Mexican citizens that are now Mexican Americans that are now part of America, and they're like scattered from like California, Nevada, Colorado, like, I don't know, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, okay? That's where we need to start our story because as we'll get into it, I think pain is hereditary, and I think this is a huge moment. So now we're flashing forward to 1942 Los Angeles, right? The world's at war. It's not a great time, okay? It's just not a good time. And we know that the South is super racist. Jim Crow laws are still in effect, but what people don't talk about a lot, except for freaking Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, that was not renewed for a second season, which is, I'm so pissed because they talked about this stuff and they did it so well. But anyways, moving on. In 1942 Los Angeles, you basically had signs that said, oh, I'm already getting passionate. Things are flying. Anyways, you have signs. I'm crossing my legs. I'm getting into it, folks. This is real. You have signs that say like, no Mexicans allowed, or, you know, whites only, or Mexicans here. It's like literally, think about it as the South, but Los Angeles. Instead of black people, it's Mexicans. Not saying there wasn't that here too, because Lord knows there was. But really, really, really not great for the Mexican Americans. So how not great was it? Okay, well, not good at all. So very little parts of the city were Mexicans allowed to live or even welcomed, okay? Just like a lot of the other country, super racist, super not okay. So most Mexican Americans are forced to live in barrios, right? Like mainly Mexican and Latino communities where, you know, they're all there. And those plots of land are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we'll get to that too, because that's a big part of this. But you have, I mean, think about it. It's less than 100 years since it was Mexico. So you're what, at 2 generations, 3 generations at most, okay? So you have a lot of the tradition alive. You still have a lot of religious, traditional, conservative Mexican Americans, but their children are not necessarily as traditional, okay? It's the freaking 40s. Jazz and swing are happening. And I mean, we're at war, so everybody's looking for a reason to cheer up, okay? And then on the East Coast, you have brilliant jazz and swing, and you have zoot suiters, predominantly worn by Black musicians and Black Americans. and a lot of Italians. My ancestors were definitely rocking the zoot suit, but it was kind of like this very loud, very stylish outfit that kind of said, F you society, I'm badass, I'm cool, this is stylish, I'm gonna wear what I want, I'm gonna have my big shoulders, I'm gonna have my long coat, I'm gonna have my balloon pants that are like 40 inches at the knee, tapering down to 10 inches so I can jitterbug and not get caught up. I'm gonna have my cool like watch chain, like it was a look. It was a cool look. And you have a lot of these young Mexican American youth that are interested in this culture. They're breaking away, they're going to the dance clubs, and they start kind of wearing these suits, and they really kind of take pride in this style. And many of them are very resentful that they grew up American, okay? Their parents grew up American, but they're not seen that way by most white Americans. They're seen as different immigrants, not welcome. And there's resentment there, okay? Can you blame them? I can't. I would be pissed off too. One of the largest gangs, groups, whatever you want to call them, in LA that wore the zoot suit and were zoot suiters were the Pachuco, which were like young Mexican Americans that, you know, kind of protected their own, were cool, they'd go to the clubs, they were doing their own thing. But at this time, it's 1942, you have a lot of these white Americans, politicians, journalists, that really want to raise the alarm on the dangers of Mexican Americans. Like, these people are not to mess with, these are dangerous people, blah, 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 blah. And here's a really other messed up thing, that despite the fact that there was a very large number of Mexican Americans that would and were enlisting in the war, they had a tendency to be seen as draft dodgers by a lot of like white servicemen. So there was this prejudice that was completely unfounded because there was a large majority of people joining of that nationality. So it's stupid. Anyways, 1942, the racist people are looking for a really good thing, a good soapbox to stand on to make an example of why these people are dangerous. So something happens. There's a man named Hank Levas who gets beat up with his girlfriend by some people. They're part of the 38th Street gang, right? Which was like another group of people that, like a gang, yeah, sure, whatever, who cares? Moving on, they get beat up. Him and some of his buddies, like 11 other peeps, go to a house party in Sleepy Lagoon, which was like this popular chill spot in Commerce, California, because they want to seek some retribution, okay? And call me old school, or call me too Sicilian, call me too Irish, I don't know, call me whatever you want. I get it, okay? You beat me up, I'm gonna beat you back up. I'm just gonna do it, okay? Sorry, Dad, I'm gonna beat you up. Anyways, so they go looking for some friendly brawl. What they didn't know was in the grass already was a stabbed, beaten Jose Diaz. They didn't do it. He was there. He was already injured. The brawl happens. Apparently he does get punched, which is messed up at some point, but they leave, okay? Nobody dies. Jose Diaz dies. Well, usually if one Mexican American kills another Mexican American, that's not gonna make newspapers because nobody really cared. Messed up to say, but nobody really cared. But this was different because somebody, I'm not sure who, saw this as an opportunity to be like, they're dangerous. The 38th Street gang is dangerous, and guess what? They had women in the gang. So they arrest Hank Levas and the 11 other people. And what transpires is basically the kindling that lights the fire of the Zoot Suit Riots, and it's about to get intense. Also, think about this. It is the 40s, okay? But this is still 1940s Los Angeles. We have the most corrupt police system that ever existed, okay? And they're still running rampant. Granted, it's not the 30s. The Shaw spoils system is not currently in effect, where you had Mayor Shaw, who was basically just taking bribes and money and kickback from mobsters, gangsters, anybody, so they could be paid off. Any kind of crime could happen. He was selling off police department jobs. It was really bad. But the cops in the 40s in LA, not that much better, and you'll soon learn why. So, Hank and his buddies get arrested, okay? During all of this and the trial that's to come, which is the longest trial at that moment in California history, the prosecutors would not let them shower, bathe, get haircuts, do anything to make themselves feel comfortable, clean, put together, because they were trying to spread the propaganda of like dirty, dangerous Mexicans. I hate to say it, but that is exactly what they were doing. And these guys and these girls pride themselves on how they look. Like the Zoot Suiters and that whole vibe, there was so much pride in how they looked and how they dressed and how they carried themselves. And they were being humiliated for a murder that they did not commit in a court that they should have never been in, okay? So this trial lasts months. They decide that Hank Lavos is going to be portrayed as the leader, and everyone's like, he's not the leader, but they don't care. They're still going with this narrative. And then the women are less cooperative than the men. So there's this other propaganda spread in the newspapers of like, oh, Mexican women are even more dangerous and terrifying than the men, which is absolutely BS. Although I will say the Snitch of the Year award, or the not snitch year of the war, goes to Lorena Encinas, I believe so, who knew who killed Jose, but she would not snitch, because we all know snitches get stitches. You don't snitch. You just don't do it, okay? You don't snitch unless you're a member of Trump's cabinet. One of the absolutely most messed up things that happened during this trial was they brought in this guy who worked for, I think, some department, some government department, and he got on the stand and he's like, well, you know, Mexicans can't help their bloodthirst because we all know they have Aztec ancestors who did human sacrifices, and that bloodthirst runs deep, okay? Honestly, that's BS. Also, not every Mexican descends from Aztec. There's a whole bunch of different things. Also, it's like saying I'm Sicilian and Italian. Does that mean I want to kill everybody because I have gladiator blood in me? It's BS. It's so stupid. But the people were eating it up. And so after trial and trial, nope, months and months and months of this trial, with no surprise, and there's no evidence besides BS things like bloodthirst, all 12 of them, or 11 of them, I think it was 12, all of them get convicted, okay? The 5 women were sentenced to go to the Ventura School for Girls, which they became wards of the state, sentenced to go there, which was like a reformatory school, but people feared it so much, they said it was worse than prison. They would swallow like thumbtacks and safety pins and anything they can do to not go to this place because it sucked that bad. And again, Lorena, she didn't say nothing because she's a winner, man. She does not snitch. And I got respect for her. I can't lie. I got respect for that. So everybody that has a brain and isn't racist knows this is BS, okay? These people were wrongly convicted. So a crazy thing happens. Like people like Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth take it upon themselves to start doing PR and public campaigns talking about how this was all BS and they should have an appeal and they should be acquitted, which flash forward 2 years, 1944, that happened. They appealed. All of them were acquitted of the charges. And, you know, besides the fact that they had a horrible couple years they should have never had, being in places they shouldn't have ever been. And we know they shouldn't have been there because eventually, and when she was much older, Lorena told her children in confidence that it was her older brother that had killed Jose Diaz. None of them. So yeah, the Sleepy Lagoon trial was a really messed up thing that happened. That was a national thing. And to be honest, if we're just going to be frank, it made racial tensions in LA really bad. So back to the barrios and the segregation in LA. So one of the most prominent areas is the Chavez Ravine, which, here we go. Here's a little bit of LA history for you. You know Dodger Stadium, the place where everybody loves to go and see baseball games in Elysian Park? It's so nice. It's so nice. Yeah, that was Chavez Ravine. That was a neighborhood of people who fought really hard to keep their land because, again, there was not many places for them to go to or where they were wanted or accepted or any of those things. They fought to keep that land, but they were pushed out so they could build a baseball stadium. So, you know, just like chew on that next time you're enjoying your Dodger dog, that you're like sitting in somebody's home, basically, that they fought. There was actually the battle for Chavez Ravine. It was a real thing. Read about it. It was not a joke. Anyways, Chavez Ravine was right next to the Marine and Naval Armory that is still there, okay? Yes, you do have a lot of minorities in the service. It was not just white, but it was predominantly white, okay? And I hate generalizations, but gonna be honest, there wasn't a lot of inclusivity at that time still. It's the 1940s America. There's a lot of racism going on. So you have two things happening here. You have the young Mexican Americans living in Chavez Ravine that are part of that growing movement of resentment that they don't have any right to the land that was once their people's, okay? And when you're only a few generations away from that, you feel that pain. I think that is hereditary. I really, really do. And they want to live their life. They are they are Americans. They have just as much right to everything as every white American does, okay? But they're not being treated that way. So when you have these white servicemen stumbling through their neighborhood to get back to the armory at night, yeah, sometimes they get pissed and sometimes they fight. But here's something that isn't talked about as much. So you have these people that are basically fighting to defend their land to some degree, but then you have a lot of these servicemen that are taught, keep change in your pocket when you're strolling at night through Chavez Ravine. Never be there by yourself, never be in a single file line, but God forbid if you find yourself walking at night by yourself through Chavez Ravine, keep change in your pocket. So with your handkerchief, you could put your coins in your handkerchief and use it as a weapon to beat Mexicans. It's horrible, okay? So you have those kinds of tensions going on. So on May 31st of 1943, a fight happens between some Mexican Americans and some servicemen, and a sailor gets beaten. This enrages the sailors, Marines, and servicemen that are all in town, and they decide on June 3rd, you know what we should do? Let's get some baseball bats, crowbars, any kind of crude weaponry, and let's storm the streets of downtown Los Angeles and just beat the living hell out of anybody wearing a zoot suit. Or hell, anybody that looks Mexican, Filipino, Black, Latino, anybody that doesn't look like my white Aryan self, let's beat them and, give them a lesson. So 50 of them take to the streets, who are soon joined by just regular civilians that are like, oh, we're beating up minorities? Hell yeah, count me in. And this goes on for 10 days with the willing compliance of cops. Like, cops off duty are taking advantage of this. They are also joining in the fun and beating people, okay? They like to beat minorities anyways. Like, that's a thing that goes on during this time. Like, police would patrol neighborhoods and look for any kind of Mexican American, Latino, colored, anybody that looked young, like 12 to 25, and they'd pick them up, arrest them, beat them up, rough them up a little bit, and send them on to the streets. Like, hey, don't be you. Like, what are you teaching there, okay? It's so absurd. It makes me so pissed. Anyways, so this goes on for 10 days, okay? You have people begging the cops to arrest them because they're so terrified of getting beaten up. Like, they're going on trolley cars and yanking people off. Miraculously, nobody dies in these 10 days. But, a couple really messed up things happen, like how almost no servicemen at all, sailors, Marines, otherwise, were arrested. It was mainly just Mexican Americans and different minorities that were arrested because we all know they're the real troublemakers. Oh, and for anybody watching Lovecraft Country, incredible show, the first episode when they are trying to get through the county line because it's a sundown county, that's roughly how LA was too. Like, if you were of not Aryan descent and you were out past 8 p.m., chances are you could probably get arrested. Why? Because you were born different than white people. Different in no other way than the fact that your color has a little melanin in it. Melanin in it. That is a tongue twister. So does this piss me off? Absolutely. What is the end result of the Zoot Suit Riots? Well, nothing was really wrapped up. Let's be honest. Racism still occurs today. We have not come that far. They did outlaw zoot suits though, because apparently wearing a zoot suit makes you a criminal. So stupid. And they also set up patrols around the city to just make sure that no other riots were starting out. But nothing really got accomplished. Equality still hasn't happened. We're not even really taught about this in schools. You know, I have good friends that grew up in LA and they know very little about the Zoot Suit Riots, and it happened here in their city. So, am I pissed? Yes. Am I tired of people not talking about things like this? Yes. Am I tired that people think racism doesn't exist anymore and it's not important to talk about these things? Yes. Because all of these things are being consistently reflected back at us in our current time and space. And if you want to know why people are pissed, it's because pain is hereditary. The pain the Zoot Suiters felt that went through their DNA of their ancestors that lost their land and were seen as immigrants in a country that was once their land is the same pain that people now have whose ancestors and descendants and whatever are the Zoot Suiters, okay? Because they're still not taught that they belong here. We have people in cages. We have people actively still picking people off the streets that look different than a white face. Okay? This is happening still. So if you're not pissed about this, then I don't know what's wrong with you. And I would like to spend a day in your brain where you don't care about anything but what Starbucks drink you're about to get, okay? Am I passionate about it? Abso-freaking-lutely, okay? So, that is my rant on the Zoot Suit Riots. There's obviously a lot more to cover here. There's a whole ton of information out there. I urge you, please, I beg you, please read up on it, okay? This was not that long ago. While you're out there living your war stories of beautiful World War II, read about the stories that were happening here on this land during that same time, because it's just as important, if not more important, because it's your country. And those are your fellow citizens, okay? So I love you guys. Wow, that run got really heavy. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have a sip really quick. Calming myself down. If you guys wanna vote on what subject I do next week, follow me on Instagram. That's where I put up the polls. You guys are awesome. I'm so happy I got to rant about this. Also, special announcement, in the month of October, I will be doing a segue from History Rants, and I will be doing rants on spooky history, specifically the origins of some of our favorite horror films. Do they have roots in historical lore? Maybe. All right, guys, I hope you have a great whatever day this is. I love you guys. You're awesome. See you guys soon. Feel like I should cut my hair. No? I feel fancy.